worry was more the inflammation, the infection, which something that we should know historically. Maybe some of you older folks know this. An infection like this was deadly. People died. People even today, there's about 23,000 deaths every year from infection in the United States. The antibiotics can't cure it, but without antibiotics, it would be life.
The infection started going a little out of hand. Is that what it was?
Yeah, that's why she was hospitalized. She had to get IV antibiotics, not
the fever and all that stuff happened.
Yeah. Okay. In a subject we already learned on Hilchos Bishul, and then we'll get straight to our subject. Trucking through it, through the Machaber and all the other practical cases. In a public meal, meaning it wasn't public, it was per invitee, but many different people were there of different denominations. There were a number of bowls, like serving bowls of soup that were poured, and when there was enough given on the table, so the person, the waiter took the serving bowl of soup and poured it back into the Clear soup pot. Now, generally, that's not a while at 5 o'clock. Sunset is at 4:30. So these are all cases we have to figure out.
Aren't they independent contractors?
Let's see. Let's read through it. Sif Aleph. Pesach Adam Pirush Masim Menu Yudah Malacha B'Keitz Adam Menu Yudah Eisa La'atzmei V'Apishu Eisa a person is allowed to have what we defined last week as a contracted worker, a kabbalah, in which you give him a set work and you give him there's a set payment that's going to be paid for this work, and the non-Jew, the Gentile, can do this work on your behalf, of course. Even on Shabbos, it's much for it to be done, so long as he does it. So now there's a few conditions, but ideally we've already settled this, and we read this last week, that there's a major difference in halacha, making it or breaking it, right? Regarding whether it's mutter or aser, regarding whether the Gentile is working for you as in an hourly or daily payment, or if he's working for you for the job. You get $200 for the job. I don't care when you do it, but you get paid for the job. So number one, even when you're getting paid for the job, a contract, it's only mutter when it's done in privacy, as this is what we mentioned in the previous chapter of the idea of Amar Asayim. Discussed this last week in length. As people don't know that the item being worked on belongs to a Jew. However, if it's well known, aser, then it's forbidden, even though it's contracted work. So the Mechaber here is preempting a question. Who cares if Jews know that this item belongs to a Jew? They'll say he's paying him for the job, and we all know it's mutter to be paid for the job, to do the work for the job. So what's the Marasayin? The thing is, people won't know. People may think that he's being paid per hour, and then that's the Marasayin involved. So that's where it would be forbidden. An interesting question that comes up from this is, let's say, your car broke down Friday morning, and you need to go to work Sunday or Monday, and you would like it to get fixed, so you give it to the mechanic. Now, of course, we've mentioned this last week, and we'll emphasize it again. One of the major conditions of any permission or allowance for a Gentile to work on your object on Shabbos is that you don't tell him to do it on Shabbos, and you don't give him a time limit which will force him to work it on Shabbos, which is identical to telling him to do it on Shabbos. So both of those are forbidden. So let's say I give him the car Friday afternoon. I said, listen, I need it done by Monday. The question is, I need it ready by Monday morning or Sunday afternoon. Do I have to tell him, please, don't work in it on Saturday? You can. If he does, well, that's when I have time. So if you don't want to work on Saturday, take it to a different mechanic. Do I have to get into this whole sticky mess? So let's think about it. Usually as a mechanic, what we would call a kabbalah, and a contracted worker. I believe so, right? Usually, correct me if I'm wrong, but usually mechanics have set things that they fix and a set price they give you. It's not per hour. It's not hourly work. Right? No? Some are hourly.
Charge for labor. That's hourly.
Yeah. Okay. So.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
1 second. Labor or hourly?
It's usually a labor.
It's an hourly labor price. Plus $125 an hour plus parts.
So what? So
they look at the
let's
books,
say
how long it should take them, and that's what they charge. Not exactly what they took, but what they should take. Right. With the book price.
So it sounds like it's a mixture.
Yeah,
it sort of is.
Yeah.
So different works have different prices, but the prices are per hour. So.
It's all per hour, but the idea is that there's an estimate of what it should take to change.
But what if it goes more? Let's say change a flat tire. Just give me something. I'm a funak. I'm pampered. I don't change flat tires. I hire work. Okay, I take the mechanic. They don't have a set price to change a flat tire. It's
Yeah,
a
they
per
do.
hour work.
They do. It's up per hour.
You know, they-
So I think there are
Doesn't take any-
certain
it takes
things.
no time. Yeah.
So I think there may be certain things that are set and, kablan, and
Yeah.
certain things that they would tell you, no, this is going to be a per hour job, which makes sense. I'm sure they don't know the situation of every car and how long it would take. So in a case that would be per hour, then certainly that would be a major problem, and you would need to tell him, you can't work on my car on Saturday. But let's say it is a set price. Let's say the guy says, no, we take, you need to switch. Let's say your engine is gone. You're getting a new engine, 10,000 shekel. Okay, you're paying for a new engine. Fine. So it's a set price. It's already included hours, everything included. But your car, let's say, says 770 license plate. You're one of those very makusha yidden. You wanted to get a 770 license plate. Jews are going to walk by. They're going to see it. They're going to know this is a Jewish car. You're going to see this guy, the Schwarzer, working on it on Shabbos, and they're going to know this is a Jewish car. Or let's say, many Jews have Volkswagens. We have a lot of, it's a non-Jewish car. So this is a problem, even if it's bekablanis, because they're a sign. Now, if the case is that the mechanical work was always done in a contracted worker basis, then we can maybe start discussing, well, there's no marasign because people know. But based on what you're telling me now, then people have no idea. It could be it is hourly. And so therefore, this will be a problem. So based on this, there was a certain sefer, a famous sefer in Hilchos Shabbos, which wrote that you could have the guy working on Shabbos. I mean, you don't have to tell him not to because it's considered contracted work. But based on what you're saying, it's not. Maybe it depends on the country. Is Israel different?
No, I just had my oil changed, and I believe it wasn't hourly. You gave me a set price before.
Okay,
so
but maybe that's something simple. What about something more complex?
it was brakes and valves or whatever. I don't know.
I had a
Probably
problem
changed.
with my windshield wipers. They said they were charging me for 2 hours of labor.
Mm-hmm. It was a labor price.
Okay,
Okay, so if the reality in a certain country is that it is accepted for the mechanics to charge an hourly price, then there's marasign for everybody. Everyone's messed up. And then you would have to tell them not to work on Shabbos. So even if you want to save a few bucks and you want to go to the Arab mechanics, because they have the cheaper labor and stolen parts, which is an issur of itself to go there. In any event, in that situation, you would people would know. It would be the only thing is that in certain dangerous Arab areas, there's no chance that you would pass by there usually. So there's no marasign. They may go in, but they may not come out.
Even without the 770 license plates, it's a problem. In Israel, it's a problem.
In an area where no Jews, let's say some very heroic individual goes into a Gaza mechanic station to fix his car, and even if it's a Jewish car, then
What about in the Jewish place without the 770 license plate?
a Jew's going to be working on it on Shabbos. That's for sure.
You have a dilemma because
No, go ahead.
the more you don't direct him, the more he's an independent contractor and you're okay. The more you do direct him, he loses independence. So with your example of the 770 license plate,
Right.
you could say to him, work on it inside and don't bring it on outside and keep the door down. So there's no marasign problem. But the more you put those kinds of restrictions, the more he looks like an employee.
From a legal standpoint.
Right.
From a legal standpoint. From a halachic standpoint, so long as it's a set job and a set price, it wouldn't make a difference in terms of that. But I understand where you're coming from. You're coming from a legalistic approach, but that wouldn't affect the halachic approach in this respect. But nonetheless, if there's marasign, it wouldn't help for him to do it inside. Let's say some other guy, Jew, passes by and wants to go inside and talk to him. It's still possible. It's whenever we ask for marasign, even if it's in privacy, usually it's forbidden. But what's your question?
A goy mechanic.
Yeah.
Without a 770 license plate.
Oh, and nobody will know that the car belongs to a Jew. Then what's the marasign?
Right, and even with the confusion, it could be hourly, wouldn't matter.
Yeah, what's the marasign? I don't think it's some guy. It's a guy's car. Why would you think it's a Jew's car?
Because the Jew shouldn't be peering in.
Yeah, but obviously the Jewish owner shouldn't be hanging around there. And if he has a pushka by the windshield or a chitas or anything else or a picture, you have to strip it of all these things in order to avoid. This is very serious in the States. The mechanics are going to be working on Shabbos if they feel like it, and so you would really have to strip it of all these things.
Jews will be walking around who don't keep Shabbos.
They may. We suspect. Even if you say, well, I assess no Jews. I assess that no Jews pass by this street. It doesn't work that way. So you would have to strip it of any Jewish resemblance, and then you don't have to get into a discussion of doing the work of Shabbos. Okay. Continuing inside, one more point on that. Again, that what we keep on emphasizing, that would only be mutter if it's a set job with a set price, not hourly. Hourly is always forbidden. It's forbidden to make or a din. Forget about marasai, right? So that condition always must. You have to tell him. You have to tell him don't do it.
I need to ask a question. Do we need to be like God himself?
After class, we'll talk. But filu imdar. So in this point, the mechaber is adding that to work on property is always forbidden because it's not possible to do it in private. It's a public thing. It's a public thing. Property. It's not possible to do it in private, and therefore it would be always forbidden for have a guy work on your property over Shabbos. But filu imdar of the kain shach shalachin al sham in the beisha. Just saying, even if you have a property, I don't know, in some gayish area, there's no Jews that live in this area. It would still be problematic because it's possible that a Jew would be passing by. Okay. The only case that it's permitted is if the work is being done in an area that's outside of a Tchum Shabbos where any Jew would be. So let's just give, for argument's sake, if it was taking place in Gaza area, okay, so no Jew is going there on Shabbos unless they're soldiers, but we all know that with Netanyahu in charge, it's not going to happen. So no Jews are ever going to go in, and if that's the case, there's never Marasayan there, and therefore you can have the future cities that we will take over when Mashiach comes be built, hopefully sooner, be built by the Arabs there on Shabbos, because no one knows.
The scenario we're talking about now is that it certainly could even be Kabbalah contract work.
This is all Kabbalah. It has to be Kabbalah. It's never permitted to have hired. If the government is paying these workers per hour, it doesn't happen.
No, but what if there's a confusion? There's not a confusion where a person doesn't know, couldn't know, because who knows what the contract.
Who could it know?
The post-war.
That's why we're talking about a case. There is no onlooker. You're right. That's why it's always usher unless there's no possibility of an onlooker. What Jewish onlookers are going to be if the work is taking place in an area where no Jews can
or if they have a sign on the side that we do only contract work, we only get paid by job. That could also.
Yeah, and that this Poskim who discussed it as well. Here in there's a lot of discussion on it because unfortunately there's a lot of bureaucracy in building here. A ton of bureaucracy in building. And therefore the sooner the better. And there's so people that lose a ton of money because unfortunately, things are delayed, etc. Sif base. Lipso avanim l'taken ha'keres afil base shel chavim asik even l'tzef chubahu b'im asikein lo yishkem b'bin. To basically create bricks and stones and the pieces, the material for the sake of the building, having the guy do that. He's not actually building, he's just preparing the material. Even that is forbidden because it's for the sake of what's attached. So let's say you're building your home and which in a Jewish area, and you have you're getting work, or let's say you're the contractor, you're a Jewish contractor, and you're supplied by someone who's working on the material on Shabbos. That is a problem. They're not allowed to do so. So you have to tell them, you can't work on my material on Shabbos. Now, if they're producing, generic, stones or bricks, and you come and buy it from them, that's not a problem because they're doing it for the public. But if it's something that's, custom made for you, tailored for your home, then you would have to tell them not to work on Shabbos.
The car thing is avoided, but you have to actually say, even if it's not something that's given it right at the beginning of Shabbos or before Shabbos, and then you need it after. Even if you don't have that situation, you have to actually say to the car guy, don't do this on Shabbos, you do it on
If
Wednesday.
we said if there's Maras Ayin or if it's hourly, yes, you have to tell them not to do it on Shabbos.
The possibility of Maras Ayin.
Yeah. Sif Gimel. So let's say that a guy comes here, a millionaire comes here, he buys himself a property, he hires contracted work guy to build him his mansion. He comes back, they tell him, listen, we built it in a year, everything's ready. He says, wow, how did you guys work so quick? Well, for you, we did a special favor. We worked 7 days a week, no breaks. And this was in a Jewish area. The halacha is, Mr. Millionaire, you just lost the home. You can't use it. The home is usher to be lived in. So that's why, even if it's not a millionaire, this would be a problem. I'm just giving you an example. So the problem is it was done in a Jewish area. Even if it's a contract, even if he's a contracted worker, a kabbalah, we said before, there's an Isra Marasayin to do it in a Jewish area. So if it's done in a Jewish area, then this would be, meaning in an area that Jews can walk to, it'd be a problem. And Baruch Hashem, there's Jews in almost all areas of the world, and thanks to Chabad houses, there's Jews everywhere today. So this is a big problem. Even if you want to build, I don't know, you're building a house in some island in the Philippines, make sure there's no Jews and no Chabad houses.
So technically, though, if the whole world knew, and you knew the whole world knew that it was a contract through whatever means you did that, technically it would be okay, right? If there's no
Marasayin, yeah. But there's no.
There would be no Marasayin.
Correct.
Everybody knew.
Right. Even in that case, even in a case where there would be no Marasayin, we only use that in very special circumstances. We don't use that style. But it could be here b'diavad if the whole world knows it's contracted work, which is interesting to verify from the whole world that today building is contracted work. Back in the day, things have changed. Back in the day, people had wood homes. People can have a home constructed in a week, with hired labor, and they would hire. And then everyone, in memoirs, there's a story of how there was a fire one year in Lubavitch that burnt all the homes down, everything, Jews and Gentile, and basically they all pitched in to help each other, and within like a month, all the homes were back up, based on from scratch from wood. So this would be, hiring, 5 workers to come help me, and I'm paying them per hour. But today, I think things are a little different. But nonetheless, l'chatchila certainly would still be usher if it's in a Jewish neighborhood. But b'diavad, there's room to discuss whether we have to apply this ruling that everything's forbidden, the house is forbidden.
You might be building, that's why?
No, because you're not allowed to have a guy work for you on Shabbos.
Okay, the cloud.
Yeah. Now, what happens if this homeowner says, but I explicitly wrote in the contract, do not work on Saturday. I wrote, how do you brazen enough to go ahead and break the contract and break the rules that I gave you? So this is the Ramah. He told him, he preempted this, he knew what was going on. And he didn't listen, he did it on his own. He wants to finish the work, he wants to make money, right? 52 days out of the year, he's able to work now. He works on Shabbos. So, in such a case where you condition and he didn't listen, then everything's okay. They don't have the ability to prohibit it.
But if you get money, if you lost money for it, if you pay to walk in Shabbos, it means that you hire him to walk in Shabbos, no? If you pay money to him. If you come back, it says that you don't need to pay, and you pay, it means that you walk in Shabbos.
Okay, Sif Dalet. Melachas farhes shafil v'metaltim yitzvina yedu l'Yisrael dinik melachas l'chubo. Public work which is done on an item which everyone knows belongs to a Jew, such as a ship. I already gave another example earlier. Car with Jewish symbols, okay, is forbidden. In other words, don't think that the difference here is that real estate work, work on property, that's what's always usher because of Marasayin, and we work on tangible, something that movable material is always permitted. No, it's really depending on, do people view it? Do people know it's a Jew's ownership or not? So by a Jewish-owned ship, and I believe, for example, what's the Carnival Cruise Lines, I believe has Jewish ownership, right? Right? Mickey Aronson, I believe, is the owner of the Miami Heat. I believe now it's his son, not him anymore. It's his son, but so it's a Jewish-owned company. So it would be if they were from, if they keep Shabbos and they would ask a shayla, it would be forbidden for the Carnival Cruise Lines to have any work done to their ships on Shabbos. That'd be a big crack, because everyone knows it's Jewish owned.
We have Mono here in Israel. It's a Jewish company, cruise line.
So yes, it would be forbidden for it to have work done to it on Shabbos, even by a guy. For Hesed, everyone knows it's being done on behalf of a Jew. And there, for sure, there's things that aren't done by kabbalah. For sure, there's things that's done based on hourly labor, and therefore there would be no room to be mounted. Sefei.
You don't go back when you don't have a duty to inspect. In other words, you have a contract, and you say no work on Shabbos. He violates the contract by doing it. If it's a contract that would take a long time to perform, you don't have a duty to go by and make sure that he's not violating it.
Listen, I'm doing my part. If he decides to, the point is that I have to remove myself from any connection with his work. So once it was contracted, once it was written in the contract, and he knows I'm against it, and he goes behind my back and does it. So I'm not an accomplice to his work. I'm not connected to his work. So he's not my shliach.
No, I understand that. I don't have a duty to
stop him if I see him.
No, if to inspect to see if he's.
No, I don't have to inspect. That's what I'm saying. I don't have to go out of my way. It's not connected. Once you make it. However, if you happen to be passing by and he sees you and you see him and you say hello and you continue life as normal, then he understands. Oh, it's the contract is just milim ba'alma. It's just mere words. It's nothing. It's not serious. It makes a joke out of the whole thing, and obviously it'd be no good. We'd have to protest him and say, "Hey, what are you doing? You're supposed to be on vacation. I can't." And let's be honest, in business, if someone you catch your worker breaking one part of the contract, even if maybe for your benefit, who knows what else he's going to break. Sifei. Im Sacher Yehuda l'shana l'shtayim shichtav le'shag le'beged hariz k'oisavei b'Shabbos kilukatz sima shichtav le'sefer shag le'beged sh'oisa b'chol yirtza. So we have a very interesting heter of the Mechaber, brought also in the Alter Rebbe, some machlekes in the Rambam and the Raavad, in this case, in which we're now redefining the term of contracted work, okay, to include, to be a little more broad and include more types of work. The case is like this. I have a yearly employee. Here the case is every year or 2 years he gets paid, meaning he's an annual or biannual contractor, and let's say I pay him, I don't know, you get a $50,000 a year salary to do X and Y work. So is that considered a contractor, or is that considered someone who's hired per hour? Same thing would apply, by the way, a month, which is today what's normal in the business world, in commerce, that you have a monthly employee, he gets a monthly paycheck, and he's not working per hour, he's working for, he has a set monthly salary. Assuming that's the case, not per hour. If it is per hour, then it's just he gets paid for his monthly hours at the end of the month. Obviously, that's a per hour contract. That's not a monthly contract. But if you get paid $5,000 a month, and in general these are your hours, then it would be monthly. So the question is like this: Is such a thing considered kabbalanus, where we say it's like a contracted worker? No, Haber was like this. If his job is he has one set job to do. Let's say here the case is talking about he is hired to weave clothing. So he gets clothing. Whenever I have whenever an order comes in, I tell him, okay, weave a shirt, weave a pants. Throughout the whole year, he doesn't have every single day work. When I give him and have a set contract with him, you get $20,000 a year. Whenever I need work done, I give you the order, you do it for me and provide it. So in such cases, it's mutter. Why? Because in this case, he doesn't have to work on Shabbos. I'm not telling him to work on Shabbos. He can work whenever he wants. And it's not like he has a backup of work that he has to work on Shabbos because of it. He can work whenever he wants, and therefore we're going to treat him like a contracted worker, even though it's not really per garment, a set price. It's really for the whole year. But nonetheless, we can still view him as a contracted worker. However, if this individual is, what's called a kolbainik here in Israel, whereas he does everything, so you give him every left-end job in the world to do. He doesn't have any set, specifications of what he works on. But everything you give him, he works on, then it would be forbidden, as there isn't a set object that he's working on. So based on this, we can understand in the case of where, let's say, I have an accountant. Remember, we asked it earlier. What can we learn from this halacha regarding an accountant? And this is the machlekes Rambam Ravid, we rule like the Rambam that it's mutter. The Ravid argues, practically we rule like the Rambam in this case is mutter, as we consider it kabbalas. So let's have an accountant. I need him to review my tax returns, etc. I'm paying him for the job, right? Usually that is the case. It's not usually hourly unless you're, I don't know, some kind of huge firm, and then, but for individuals, it's usually a set price, let's say, right?
I have this situation, by the way. I have a place
In hourly?
in America that I do.
Set price. Set price, yeah, that's how it is. It's about, I think, like $300, usually between $300 and $500, set price.
It's not hard to find it from accountant.
That's also true. But the question is, this is a guy's account, this is who you work with. This is who you work with, okay? Do you have to tell him not to work on Saturday? So the answer is, since he's being paid for the job, or let's say, so they'll for sure be mutter, because in that case you're paying him for the actual job. But let's say you were paying him, let's say he works for your firm, your company, so you have a bookkeeper or an accountant that's actually working for the month. He gets a monthly salary. So if he has to work on Shabbos, first, no good. But if he can choose his work hours, as long as he gets the job done, or certain hours are done per month, then in this case, since he has a set job, which is just and only the accounting, and he's getting a not hourly but monthly set salary, therefore it would be mutter based on this heter.
What did you say to the original?
But he's still getting a salary.
Right. So that's the chiddush here, that even though he's not getting paid for every, let's say, for every employee that he files for, but he's just getting paid for taking care of all the tax returns of your entire company. Nonetheless, since he's getting paid a set amount every month, not based on hour.
But it's still a salary. I understand.
Yeah. So, but that's the chiddush.
What about you're in Israel?
You're edging like the Ravid.
What about the other benefits that he would get other than salary? But, are you deducting money?
Right. So from a real perspective, he's obviously my employee. I agree with you 100%. He's considered my employee. He would be doing his own returns, right, for on behalf of the company. But from a halachic perspective, we view him as like a contracted worker, because he's not being paid per hour, but for the month.
So you can go to the Israeli government and say, I'm not responsible for making contributions for him because he's an independent contractor.
Well,
it won't work.
The original case, I just didn't hear, your answer sort of got I didn't hear it properly. The original case where the accountant is for sure a contracted worker.
He's not, well, in a case where you're paying him, I charge $300 to file your taxes. Project, then that's for sure okay.
You don't have to say.
Of course, unless you tell him, listen, I need to file by Sunday morning, right? Okay. But if you don't tell him that, then obviously it's okay.
So what about a case here, same accountant?
Yeah.
There's Jewish partners milling around who don't keep Shabbos. Right. And he comes on and goes, oh, you're working on Mr. Goldstein's account here. I see it's Shabbos. Could that be a problem? Like if there were other employees?
Obviously, if we see him, it's for sure usher. And in such a case, even though it's not usher to give him the work, as we don't have to assume he's going to do it on Shabbos, and I'm not telling him to do it on Shabbos, the same heter would apply. The thing is a Jew, and you don't want a Jew to do Mechal Shabbos, therefore it would be good for us to tell him, please don't work. I'm a religious person, please do not work on my account on Shabbos.
If you knew there were going to be potential for Jews to come in.
Jews around.
There could even be Jews coming in.
Even if there's no Jews around. Even if he's in his own home, I don't want to do Michal Shabbos. But is there an Isser?
Better be safe. Just tell him not to do that Shabbos.
Yeah, but you're saying Mitzad Marasayin. That's a good point, because there you have the name on it. 100%, it would be a problem, unless you say that everyone knows it's based on Kabbalas, but it's not always based on Kabbalas. If you're a big firm, then they do charge per hour. They don't know how long it's going to take. They would charge. They have an hourly rate, so it's not just one simple tax return for one person. So yeah, it's tricky. The Rama says, "V'daftu schar l'mlach miches can be allowed to for the chalav. Schar l'chomlach is not this manastis for an also, but to rent him for to hire him for all jobs of kolbenik, that would be forbidden. So it's specific to one specific job project, and he has a monthly or yearly salary he gets for the job for doing this when he's given the orders. Another important condition is that it can't be done in the house of a Jew. From this we can understand that even if one has a maid that works for him and she gets a monthly salary, she doesn't work per hour, she's a Gentile. Obviously, it is prohibited for her to do malacha, anything forbidden on Shabbos on behalf of a Jew. It's forbidden for her to do because it's being done in the house of the Jew. Even as contract work. One of the conditions, it has to be outside of the home of the Jew. Okay. it has to be, if she wants to take the dishes, I'm doing dishes, let's say, I don't know, let's say she's sewing, there's a whole bunch of clothing, kids' clothing, she's in charge of everything, so she also sews them. So she can't do in the house, if she wants to go to her own house and sew them and take them with her, okay, that's something else, as long as she's not forced to do it, it's her choice when to do it.
My 93-year-old mother-in-law, Baruch Hashem, has a 24-hour caretaker.
Right.
So there's all sorts of things that probably happen on Shabbos that are violating the regulation.
Right, and obviously, well, if she's a chayla, if she's considered a chayla, a sick person, you can have a guy do different works for you for the sake of a sick person, so it's a little different. But
what if she's well, but she needs the care? She needs the care, but she's well enough,
It depends what. What's malacha, what's
Wow,
the
that's
malacha?
difficult.
Let's say someone who's in a wheelchair, can you have the guy, take them and press the button for the elevator for them to go up and down? That's a problem. It's a problem because they're working for you. Yeah. Okay, last halacha here of this chapter. Yehudi is a sifrav. Yehudi akedim mechs u'maskele and Yehudi l'kabel mechs b'Shabbos. Muter imhu b'kablanos. T'hainu shayim l'shalig v'mei dinar and etem chakach v'kach. The Ramah b'chen yuchel haskeh mechs shel Shabbos le'nei Yehudi v'heinu Yehudi kach harevach shel Shabbos is la'atzmei. V'lo yichashin Hashem v'tzorich yisrael lo yisad ha'makom seidek ha'gav leichashu. So back in the day, this is something that doesn't exist today as far as I know in any country. But back in the day, the way it worked was like this: tax collecting worked in the following method. There was no IRS revenue service that they would be in charge of, implementing heavy fines, and everyone was just trusted to file their returns, and that's it. Or they were here in Israel, that's done automatically through your employee that they do it, or you have to be an atzmi and automatically file yourself. The way it worked is that every neighborhood or every city, a certain individual would pay the government an X amount of money to collect taxes. So let's say there's a possibility of $100 million worth of taxes from this town. So I pay the government 80 million, and I keep 20 million. So this is what was done. So many Jews were tax collectors. So they did. And so they bought it, they purchased the tax collecting, and they would have to pay first. So you have to be very wealthy. So they would, let's say, give 80 million ready to the king's coffers. And now all the tax money collected is theirs. So
Did they set the price too or no?
who?
The tax collectors or the people who bought.
Well,
the right
technically,
to do it?
no. Halachically, meaning from an aspect of stealing, it's only the king who has the right to set the prices of taxes, the amount of taxes, or the government today. No one else has the ability to. It's similar to, let's say, if an accountant, told you, taxes went up now to 25%, and he lied, and really taxes only 17%, and he's pocketing that money, and he's a pure ganav. I mean, there's nothing to discuss. He's a ganav. And so from the king's perspective, this town is worth 100 million in taxes, and you collected 120, then you're stealing, and that's why we find in halacha there's a few halachas designated for tax collectors, because it was known the tax collectors were big ganavim, as they had henchmen that worked for them. The king supplied them with enforcers, police, and brutal henchmen that they would force people to pay, and often they wouldn't follow the guidelines, and they would take more than they were supposed to. Never less. They were never suspected for taking less, only more. And because of this, they were considered ganavim, and that's why we find, like as the Rambam writes, and the din of a tax collector, is he considered? What kind of ganav is he considered? No, they didn't even give the option of. They didn't say an accountant who steals. They just said an accountant. What type of ganav is he considered? So these tax collectors, was a big nisayin, because no one can stop them. They have the governmental permission. They bought the permission. So the question is like this. So let's say this is an honest Jew. He's honest. He does everything by the book. Doesn't take a dime more. He even goes further and helps people, gives them discounts, etc. Okay. Now, what does he do about Shabbos? I mean, every day you're not collecting taxes, you're losing revenue, bottom line, So what does he do? So the Mechaber rules that he's allowed to have a non-Jew. He can hire a non-Jew to do so for him. And how is this mutter? if he hires him in the way of kablanis, which means that he tells the non-Jew for every $10,000 you collect on the Saturday, you get to keep $1,000. So that's considered like a contracted work. It's not hourly work. And now, even though in general we say it's marasayin and it's forbidden, but in this case, says the Mechaber, because it's such a great loss, therefore they allowed it to be done. And I guess in such a case, because we're dealing with so much money, people would not be able to control themselves, and therefore they would just transgress anyway. So the Chachamim gave a leniency in the tax collecting business. Again,
in this kind of business, whose taxes were collected every day.
It seems like, yeah. I mean, how they went from door to door. Yeah.
They had to everybody every day.
No. They wouldn't collect daily. I mean, I believe it was either monthly or yearly. From what I recall, historically, it was either monthly or yearly. But nonetheless, it was often it had to be collected. Sometimes it was, the king. Sometimes there was no tax collector, and the king just told the Jewish community, you guys had to come up. But something in the Jewish community itself. Let's say, for example, that Arba Aratzos, which was abolished in, I think, like 1780 or something, somewhere around there. And so, but until it was abolished, so the Jewish communities of Vad Arba Aratzos, they had to give the king, I believe the king of Poland, or maybe the king of Germany, a certain tax every year. And now they had to collect that tax from the Jews in the city. So they had to have, a Jewish tax collector collecting it. And I guess they didn't collect it on Shabbos in that situation. But, like God knows, worst time to steal from a Jew is on Shabbos, from Jew. It doesn't have anything to offer you. But in other places, the way it would work is that, they would go and they collect from Goyim. They collect those from Goyim. Goyim that lived in the Jewish vicinities also had tax to collect from them. And then they would literally have to go door to door. So he says another case which was common is that there would be contracted workers that worked for the government in producing currency. So today, right, it's all done with today it's all done under the government. The government produces currency. I think anyone else who would do it, they would be under arrest from FBI. But back in the day, there would be many contracted workers that they were licensed by the government to produce coins for them. So what do we do about this on Shabbos? If he's licensed, the government needs currency. There's no such thing as a day off. And so they have the ability to hire a Gentile to work in their place, and the Gentile will get, let's say, for every 1,000 coins you create, you get to keep 100 of them, something like that.
The same thing with stamps.
Same thing with stamps. How does stamps work?
Stamps,
that's the government produces them.
And they're Jewish companies that manufacture stamps.
You're saying the government, so this is not much the same way. You're saying the government hires companies to work for them?
Yeah. Sam Malamed, one of the biggest stamp manufacturers in America.
Wow.
One of the bigger ones.
So in that case, so the government says, listen, I don't know how, maybe they don't work on Shabbos. I would assume they do.
I don't think they do.
Right. But in the case that, let's say the government would say, listen, you got to work on Saturday, then they would have to have, there's other ways of arranging, but here we have a special letter we're learning about in these cases where they would have a Gentile do it. It would have to be owned by the Gentile basically over Shabbos, and he would have to take a certain percentage. But there's other ways to work around this that we'll learn in the next siman of Reish Mem Hey. Okay, this is the end of this chapter inside. We're now going to go outside, just recap and summarize all the practical cases. Okay, so for a final summary of bottom line, stop the confusion. Can the guy do the job for me on Shabbos or not? We've been here for an hour. What's going on? This bottom line, can you, can he not? So the answer is yes, but on condition you fulfill the 7 conditions that I'm about to say. So the 7 conditions need to be fulfilled. So you have to check the list of the 7 conditions, make sure each one is fulfilled for work to be allowed by the Gentile. Number 1 is what we've been saying the whole time: the Gentile is being paid for the job and not a time-based salary. We said there is an exception regarding if he's paid for the month. He has a monthly salary independent of the hours, just a monthly salary. So that's also okay. So that would fulfill the first condition. But if he was given a specific job to do, let's say fix my pants or fix the car, and I'm paying him per hour, that's no good. It's not considered a kablanas according to the Alter Rebbe. I saw some Poskim who wanted to say it is, but it's according to the Alter Rebbe, it's clearly, he writes it. It both has to be a set job and a set amount for the entire job. You can't mix the two. You can't be a set job and it's just per hour for the job. Okay. That's condition number 1. Condition number 2, it's taking place outside the Jew's home. Never in the Jew's home is it allowed, and therefore nothing can be learned from this chapter of leniency of having a guy in your home, a maid, to work for you, or in Maistis. Let's not forget, a lot of Maistis, a lot of shuls, Chabad houses, and Maistis have Goyim working there on Shabbos. They cannot do anything that's prohibited for a Jew to do on Shabbos because it's inside the home. So even if it's a monthly salary, they don't have to, they're choosing, it makes no difference.
You can't turn lights on and off, they can't.
Definitely not for a Jew, absolutely not. If it's for themselves, if they're doing it for themselves, then that's a different story, but definitely not for the Jew. So that's being done outside the Jew's home. Number 3, it's being done with a movable object as opposed to land or any matter related to land. Like you said earlier about manufacturing bricks, that's also no good. In this case, the one exception we would allow it to be done to land is in a case where it is it's not in an area that Jews are found or the Jews would be able to walk through on Shabbos, because outside of Tchum Shabbos of any Jewish area. Or if it's, so we said before, if everyone knows that it's the hiring is done based on boldness, that it's not hourly work and it's completely done based on boldness. We're going to see later, soon, when I'm done the summary regarding collecting garbage and building a shul, what the Shulchan Aruch writes about this. Number 4 is that the movable object that is being done with is not evident that it belongs to a Jew if the work is done in public. So if you gave him the object and then you see him doing it outside on his front lawn, it's no good. Or if he's doing it in a store, but anyone can walk into a store, it's still no good.
If it's obvious that it belongs to a Jew.
If it's obvious it belongs to a Jew, yes. Number 5 is that the Gentile cannot be told explicitly to do it on Shabbos. Number 6, the Gentile must be given enough time to get the job done before or after Shabbos if he chooses. Can be forced into a situation that he has no choice to do it. 7, the payment has already been set and will be given upon the completion of the job. There's a set payment, it's not per hour. Okay, so those are the 7 conditions. If all those conditions are fulfilled, it's fine.
How is the set payment different than that one?
We said the first condition was it has to be a set job.
Yeah.
7th is has set payment.
Okay.
Meaning the job is fix the car. Payment is it's $500 for the fixing. B'diavad, if the guy did work for a Jew on Shabbos, then the halach is that. So this is a point we didn't say earlier. We mentioned regarding the guy building the home. So if it was contracted work that he's, let's say I'm paying the contractor $200,000 to build my home, nothing less, nothing more, and he worked on Shabbos, and b'diavad the home would still be mutter. But if I'm paying him, if the contractor says, this is the estimate, but I'm going to charge you per hour based on the amount of days it takes, then then the home would be usher. We said that earlier, that even the home itself would be prohibited. So a lot of the discussion in the Poskim is brought regarding building a shul. Can we be lenient to allow, a shul is something we need built. We need built as soon as possible. So can we be lenient to have a guy continue the building of a shul on Shabbos? And the Alter Rebbe writes the following in the Shulchan Aruch, that there are some communities that are lenient to permit the guy to continue working and building the shul on Shabbos, based on the fact that everybody knows that it's contracted work and not hired work, and if there's no marasayim. Bottom line, while we mentioned last week, I'm going to mention this is a chilul Hashem for the Goyim to see that you're building your place of worship on the Saturday is a chilul Hashem. It's desecration of the mitzvah. So the best thing is not to rely on this, but nonetheless there is a leniency that is given regarding it. Regarding building homes in rural areas, that there are no Jews that can pass by, and there's no, here in Israel, there's no army that's going to be there, etc. So such a case, if it's contracted work, would be mutter to be done. May a Gentile do renovations in your home? And I'm not living in my home right now. I own a home. I'm renting it. I'm renting it I'm renting it soon, and I want the guy to do renovations, renovate the kitchen. Can he work there on Shabbos? Absolutely not, because it's a Jewish home. Right? We said before, you can never have a guy do even contracted work in a Jewish home. Even the metalton, certainly on the actual building itself. So that's never allowed, and therefore, in these cases, you must prior condition with the contractor not to do renovations on Shabbos, because if you don't,
you can violate it.
Again, I'm not responsible for what he does. If he violates, it's beyond my control. He can also do a lousy job. What am I supposed to do? You can also take the money and run away. What am I supposed to do? But at least to begin with, because if we don't do that, and then he begins working on Shabbos, we enter now into a whole question. Is it mutter? Can we benefit? It's a big balagan. You'd have to protest him, and he may tell you after, no problem. I won't work on Saturday, but because I'm not working on Saturday, I'm now going to lose 2 other jobs. Please give me another $50,000. So you mess yourself over. So that's why, to begin with, the best thing is always to clarify. And in general, whenever there's a long-term job, you should always speak and advise with the Rav to get a Shabbos, Shabbos contract, a contract that takes Shabbos into account, to avoid any legal issues that may arise if you then have to protest the Shabbos work. Now, here's an interesting question, similar to this one. I rent my home to a guy. I own a home in an area that's no longer a Jewish neighborhood, or I bought it for investment, and I'm renting it to a guy. This happens, you have a lot, because you have today a lot of companies that, real estate companies, that basically they advertise to invest your money and give you 5-10%. You make 5-10% a year based on the rental of the amount you're investing. So I give them $10,000 and say, well, you're going to get a yearly income from this of, let's say $1,000 or $2,000. So what are they in essence doing? They're taking your money. There's many companies that do this. They take your money that you invested with them. They purchase homes. You are on the deed. You are one of the owners of the home. And then they rent it to people in the United States, Goyim, let's say. And those Goyim pay monthly rent. And you get a portion of those proceeds. Okay? So the question is, let's say they want to do renovations to the home. Can they do it? The answer is no, because the home is owned by a Jew. We already said. Now, if it's an area that there's no Jews that live and it's outside of Chum Shabbos of any Jews, okay, it's a different story. But in the case that it's not the case, even if it's a contracted worker, it would be problematic. Same thing regarding a home that's owned by a Gentile, but it's rented by a Jew, and the guy wants to do work on it. He can't do work on Shabbos because right now you rent the home, so you have to stop Shabbos.
He can't do work in his own house.
The guy cannot do work in his own house. Well, I'm renting it. It's my house. Right?
Okay, let's have a Gemara here in 2 minutes, so we're gonna.
Well, it's 11:25. This is an exact time.
I know 11:20 is when we had agreed, but we go over it because we just forgot. 10:20, 11:20.
Okay. We'll finish it next week. We don't have a lot left.
What about this? This is sealed. This guy gave sealed 80 Israelis. What do you do this? Bring it down to the cola, one of them, or
No, maybe.
something sealed.
Okay, Shukayach. We'll continue next week.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. She started right now.